I'm Barbara. I'm 34. For years I quietly took care of my parents. I sent them $550 every week so they could live comfortably. But on my son's birthday they didn't show. When I called, my father answered and said, flatly, "We don't count your family." He hung up. I was shaking. I closed every account in my name. 40 minutes later, my mother erupted. In that instant, I decided I was done being their daughter. The moment my father declared my son didn't count, everything changed. You'd think after all I'd given, the money, the time, the sacrifices, they'd show at least some basic decency. Instead, they treated me like a utility. Someone whose only role was to fix their problems. They saw my generosity as an obligation, even a weakness. For too long, I let them. This all began 3 years ago, when I started wiring $550 every week. It became routine. There was always a reason: my dad's blood pressure medication, rent increases, the car needing repairs, my mom needing new glasses. They never once said thank you. It felt expected, like it was mine and Rachel's job to keep them afloat. Rachel is my younger sister. She's always been their favorite blonde, with perfect teeth, pageants, as a kid. They brag about her job, her boyfriend, her haircut. I was the responsible one, handling bills, making calls, driving them to appointments, sending money. They never asked Rachel for anything. Even Rachel saw it when things got worse and sided with me. My husband Tyler used to ask why I put up with it. I didn't have an answer. I simply couldn't imagine cutting them off, despite how cold they'd been, especially toward our son. I tried to include them. They never bonded with him. They rarely babysat or acknowledged his birthdays. Mom once said she didn't feel connected to him because he looked too much like Tyler. Still, I sent photos, invited them over, kept trying. Last weekend was my son's 3rd birthday. We planned a small backyard party. He was thrilled for weeks. He chose a bulldozer cake and kept saying Grandma and Grandpa would come. We even printed a small sign that read, "Welcome family." They never arrived. After the guests left and the candles were blown out, after my son fell asleep with cake on his shirt and one shoe off, I called. Dad picked up. I didn't demand an explanation. I simply said, "We were waiting for you." He replied, "We don't count your family," and hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand and felt an odd calm, as if something inside me had shifted. I opened my laptop and shut everything down, every bill in my name, utility accounts, the grocery card, the bank account they'd used. I informed their landlord and told him not to contact me again. 40 minutes later, my phone filled with calls. Mom left 7 voicemails in 10 minutes, calling me selfish, saying I was destroying them, insisting I owed them because they were my blood. She called Rachel, called Tyler, and then appeared at my grandmother's house screaming so loudly the neighbors came out. Grandma already knew what had happened. I told her the story, and for the first time, she didn't defend them. When Mom started ranting in the driveway, Grandma stepped out calm, and then, with a slap that felt final, she silenced her. Grandma said, "How dare you treat your daughter like that? You're lucky she gave you anything at all." After that, everything changed. I watched from the car while my son slept in the back seat, clutching a small plastic truck. In that moment, I realized I wasn't only their daughter anymore. I was his mother, and I would protect him from people who never protected me. After the slap, there was a few days of silence. No calls, no texts, but I wasn't naive. I knew Mom. Silence was the eye of her storm. Rachel checked in every morning, asking if I was okay, and if I was sure about what I'd done. I told her I was more than sure. I was free. For the first time, I wasn't constantly monitoring my phone or calculating what I'd have left after paying their bills. The quiet broke on Thursday. My work email pinged. A forwarded message from our joint cell phone provider. Apparently they'd tried to upgrade phones on my account. Expensive models, but I'd already shut the account down days earlier. The attempt was blocked. That same day, Tyler found an unstamped letter stuck in our mailbox, left by someone who had driven to our house. My name was on the front in my mother's handwriting. The note read, "You can ignore us, but don't forget, family is blood, and your little boy has our blood too." That line changed things. Revenge stopped being just emotional. It became practical. I photographed the letter and drove to Grandma's. She read it, then told me to stay calm. Then she said something unexpected. "It's time they learn what survival looks like without you." She had been keeping track. From a small notepad, she produced a list of every major expense I'd covered over the past 3 years. Rent, utilities, medical bills, phone plans, groceries, car repairs, even some Amazon purchases. I was in disbelief. Grandma said, "We're not going to hurt them. We're going to show them." So I started small. I called their dentist and removed my name from the file. After removing my name from their pharmacy account, I contacted their landlord again to request a copy of their lease. I wanted to see the reality of their situation. It turned out they hadn't paid rent that month. The next day, my mother called me from an unknown number. I ignored it. Soon after, Rachel texted. They had just shown up at her workplace. I called her immediately. Mom and Dad had walked into Rachel's office, acting as if nothing had happened, asking her for $300 to get through the week. Rachel refused. She told them, "If you want money, ask the daughter you actually respect." My father became angry, raising his voice and calling her a disappointment. That night, Rachel came over with a bottle of wine, but her expression had changed. She looked distant. "They don't care about either of us," she said. "They only care about what they can take." I nodded. She asked, "So what's next?" That's when I told her about the account they didn't know existed, back when I was still managing everything, paying their rent, bills, and prescriptions. I set up a separate account under my name alone. It was intended as an emergency fund. Only Tyler and Grandma knew about it. What my parents didn't know was that every week, on top of sending them $550, I deposited an extra $100 into that account. By the time I cut them off, it held just over $15,000. I told Rachel about it that night, while she was still upset over what Dad had said. Her face went blank when I mentioned it. Then she asked the same question Tyler had asked years earlier. "Why didn't you use it for yourself?" I explained I wasn't ready to leave back then. I thought I might need it for them. But now I had another plan. The first step was hiring a process server. Quietly, I gathered every receipt, transfer, and record of the expenses I'd covered. Grandma co-signed a statement confirming how long I had been supporting them financially. This wasn't about suing or reclaiming money. I didn't want anything from them. It was about creating a clear record before they could start spreading lies. Because I knew my parents. The moment the free ride truly ended, they'd tell people I abandoned them, never helped them, or that my husband influenced me. I intended to stop that narrative before it started. 2 days later, they were officially served. It wasn't a lawsuit, just a formal notice that all financial ties were cut and that any further attempts to use my name for credit or bills would be treated as fraud. Rachel told me they panicked. Dad yelled at the mailman. Mom sat outside chain-smoking for hours. Then I got a text from her. "I hope your son never treats you the way you treated us." It didn't hurt anymore. What unsettled me was what happened next. Grandma called in the middle of the night. Someone had broken into her shed. Nothing major was stolen, but the lock was broken and things were tossed around. Only one box was missing. A box of my old school belongings. Report cards, baby pictures, and letters I'd written as a child. We both knew who had done it. I didn't sleep that night. Tyler sat with me while I reviewed every security camera we had. I checked my son's room 3 times. It became clear they weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were trying to reach me through my past and through my child. So I began phase 2. If they wanted to dig into my life, they were going to uncover something else, something that would backfire. and I knew exactly where to begin. I contacted the one person they believed they had under their control, Uncle Dan. He's my father's younger brother, the one who grew up constantly blamed for everything in the family. He moved out of state years ago after a serious falling out. None of us fully understood. My parents always spoke about him with contempt, calling him a drunk failure who never achieved anything. But I remembered something. At 16, I overheard a late-night call between Mom and Grandma. Grandma had been furious. She said, "You and Alan stole what was never yours, and Dan has every right to be angry." At the time, I assumed it was about some inheritance dispute or petty family drama. But with everything escalating, threats, break-ins, letters, I wanted answers. I needed leverage. I called Uncle Dan and told him everything. The money, the birthday, the letter, the slap, the break-in. He went silent for a moment, then said, "I've been waiting for this day for 20 years. I asked what he meant, and what he told me turned everything upside down. When my grandparents on my dad's side passed away, they left an inheritance for all 3 sons. But there was a condition. They didn't trust my father with money, not because he was careless, but because he was manipulative. The estate was divided 3 ways, but with one rule: my share would go directly to me when I turned 30. My grandparents left me money, not my parents, not Uncle Dan. Uncle Dan had a copy of the original will, but my father got to the lawyer first, claiming I didn't want the inheritance, and had declined it. I was 17 at the time. I didn't even know they'd passed away until 2 weeks after the funeral. Dan had suspected wrongdoing, but lacked proof or money to challenge it. He offered to send me everything: documents, emails, even a letter my grandmother wrote that was never delivered. I gave him my address. 3 days later, a package arrived. Inside was a handwritten letter dated 12 years ago. The letter from my grandmother began, "If you're reading this, it means you finally saw through the lies. You were always meant for better things. Don't let them take that from you." I felt sick. I sat on the kitchen floor reading it. Repeatedly. Tyler didn't say anything. He just sat next to me. I called Rachel. That night she came over. We read the letter together. Then the will, she whispered. "They're monsters." But the situation worsened the next morning. Rachel called panicked. She'd received an anonymous email with a folder of photos: her house, front door, car, bedroom window. The message: "Pick a side fast." She called the police, but without a direct threat, they could do little. It became clear this was intimidation, not guilt. They were trying to scare us back into submission. Once, that might have worked. Not now. I had the will, the letter, Uncle Dan, Rachel, and Grandma. And they had nothing. I went to a lawyer and told him everything. Calm but direct, he said, "If this holds up, it's going to get ugly for them fast." He reviewed the documents: Uncle Dan Sepp's copies, Grandma Sepp's letter, and my compiled financial records. Then he showed me something unexpected. "There's Sepp's a trust in your name, still active." I was stunned. The trust was real, established by my grandparents. No funds could be accessed until I turned 30. The same year I started sending my parents weekly payments. They had spent 3 years draining my account while secretly sitting on mine. Worse, they'd forged my signature 3 times to withdraw small amounts. $2,000 here, $1,500 there. The lawyer said we could press charges. This was theft, fraud, not just family drama. I didn't answer him yet. That night, Rachel came over again, shaken. She'd just spoken to Mom. Dad had a breakdown, yelling, punching cabinets, claiming he was tired of disrespect and being cut off like trash. Mom told Rachel to convince me to drop the lawyer. "You're destroying the family for money that was never yours anyway." That phrase struck me. Never mind anyway. It revealed exactly how they viewed me: a tool, a resource, not a person. Rachel didn't stay neutral this time. She told Mom to stop contacting her or be blocked. She had filed a report about the photos. Then she shared something unexpected. Mom's silver bracelet, supposedly a family heirloom, had been pawned for $80 last month. It fit their pattern. Sentimental buildup, then selling for cash when convenient. 2 days later, everything came to a head. Grandma called. My parents were officially evicted. 2 months of unpaid rent. My name removed from all accounts. They had no plan without me. They tried begging the landlord, claiming I had money and was hiding it. He refused. That evening, Tyler noticed a car parked across from our house. An old blue sedan, engine running. When he stepped outside, it sped off. We reported it to the police, providing the photos, break-in evidence, forged withdrawals, and harassment. A case was opened. The next morning, I received a text from an unknown number. "You don't get to win." I wasn't trying to win. I was done losing. The final call came on Tuesday, from the sheriff. My parents had been caught attempting to use my old ID at a check-cashing location. The clerk flagged it. Police found a folder with Rachel's address and photos inside. They weren't spiraling, they were planning something. I filed a restraining order immediately, for myself and my son. Rachel did the same the next day. That was the boundary they could not cross. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt peace. Grandma invited us over that weekend. Me, Tyler, Rachel, and my son. She made pot roast and wore her pearls, saying she felt like celebrating. She pulled me aside and gave me a small box. Inside was a locket with a photo of me as a toddler and one of my son at his birthday party. "This is the family that matters," she said. Then she added, laughing, "I slapped your mother once, but if I ever see her again, it won't just be one slap." For the first time in weeks, Tyler and I used part of the trust money to improve the backyard. Nothing extravagant, just a small playhouse. My son calls it his work zone. He loves tools now. Rachel moved into a small place nearby. She comes over every Friday and helps babysit on weekends. We've never been closer. As for my parents, they disappeared. The last we heard, they were with a cousin in the desert. No car, no job, no money. Uncle Dan sent a photo weeks later. They didn't even recognize him. Just 2 empty faces, leaving a store with chips and a 6-pack. I didn't feel bad. This wasn't revenge. It was correction. The result of burning bridges until no wood remained. I finally understood something Grandma told me at 16. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to let dead things stay buried. We did. Now we are quiet, normal and free. They don't count as my family. And that's fine, because they aren't part of it anymore.